You have a business. It's an awesome business. But I have a question for you. Have you ever wanted to start a show? Maybe you have a show, but you're looking for more guests. I know when I started mine, this is a question I had, and that's why I'm excited to bring to you Joon Han. He is the CEO of Awesome Guests, and he's going to be sharing with us today how you can get more guests for your show that are awesome. And if you are a CEO, an entrepreneur, a business owner, an author, speaker, consultant, if you want more publicity, you need to talk to him because whether you have a show or not, he can help you get booked on more shows. I'm excited to bring him up right after we thank our sponsor. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joon Han. How are you doing today?
Great, man. Thanks for letting me be on the show, Mario. Appreciate it.
I am so excited to feature you. Ever since we met back at one of the podcasting events, I've just been so impressed with what you're doing and who you're helping. How did it all come to be?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm most well known for my TED Talk, Get Ahead by Giving Back, and I did that to grow my first company I ever started, which is super boring stuff, a strategy and process engineering company. And we did what you're supposed to. You, as a small boutique company, you just keep growing it and growing it by getting larger clients. And about 7 years ago, we kind of hit our numbers, and the work wasn't as fun as it used to be. So I effectively retired from that, and that's when I did my TED Talk and still chipping away at this book along the same kind of thing, using generosity in business. But just like you, Mara, I know that you and I, we probably network with a lot of entrepreneurs, and the good thing is we meet a lot of great people. The sad part is we meet a lot of people that aren't going to be in business maybe 2 or 3 years from now, which is heartbreaking. And what you find all the time is there's a lot of people that unfortunately have this label of being the best kept secret, right? And it's just like the kiss of death in business. It means that you know to be successful entrepreneur, you have to have three different buckets of skills. One is the technical skill, one is the management or the project management, leadership, and the other one is like sales and marketing. And so a lot of people that are really good at one actual skill are usually not very good at sales and marketing, and so they die this like horrible best kept secret death. And so about 4 years ago, my business partner and I, we've known each other for years. We just, even though I was retired, we'd meet every Thursday night at a Denny's, like 11 o'clock at night, just kick around ideas and share what we're reading and things like that. And we had a, we had a, somewhere around the time I retired from my strategy company. So this is about, I want to say almost 8 years ago. We were kind of just, I think about what podcasting was like 8 years ago, right? Under 40,000 podcasts. It was mostly people that had the technological kind of knowledge to know how to do it. So we did a show as an experiment for exactly 1 year. Um, and it's called Your Biz Rocks. It's a general business advice show. You can find it on YouTube or iTunes or whatever. And then we after we did that experiment for a year, it wasn't like we wanted to grow that brand. That wasn't the point of that show. So I've been watching the podcasting industry ever since, and come to realize like podcasting is a very powerful medium for people to shed this like best kept secret kind of thing, right? So think of if you're an author, or say you're even like crowdfunding something, or a lot of people on our platform are coaches or consultants. You get on one really good podcast, and you share your expertise in a very authentic way, and answer the very forthright questions from the host and whatnot. That could set you up for like a year's worth of business, right? If you get on the right show. And so we were just kind of like, well, how do people find people? Like, this, like if you do an interview based show, and even if you have a pretty good network, like right around episode 37 to 39, you start running out of like the best guests that you have that you are directly connected to. And so then the question is, how do you keep that guest
I gotta,
quality up?
I gotta ask you. Do you have specific stats on that? Because it's a little surreal you say that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I did. When we built Awesome Guests technologically, we started building it 3 years ago. But we did a lot of, I have a lot of friends that introduced me to. I didn't have a lot of connections in the podcasting space, but I have some, pretty pretty prominent friends that introduced me to other podcasters, and so we interviewed about 300 hosts, and we also interviewed about 200 bloggers because our site can work for if you're a blogger or podcast host to find like guest contributors or interviews, and yeah, we got back a lot of interesting data. I mean, I wish, in hindsight, we could have asked a couple more questions, but I don't know if we would have gotten the great response rate, right? If you ask like 3 questions, you can pretty much get all of them answered. If you ask 5, you're not getting some of the surveys back. And so things like we found that the average host of a sustainable a show past its first year, the average host is spending anywhere from 7 to 10 hours searching for and vetting a guest. Now, I would have liked to gone back and see which is the more time-consuming part, the searching or the vetting. But I think that probably differs, based on the guest. But yeah, like a newbie podcaster just starts out of the gate with some relationships and people they know on LinkedIn. And again, right around like like I said, about 37, they still haven't gotten to the year mark, but they're kind of tapped out of um, their direct network. And so usually your guest quality at that point is either going to go down tremendously because you're not able to vet higher quality guests because your network has run dry, or your show is really taking off and your guests start to really like go up in prominence and things like that. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to creep you out with the numbers and stuff like that, but
No,
we've been
I'm
yeah.
fascinated by it, and I'm excited to hear, what that revealed to you, and why you built the software. But I'm blessed that I haven't had an issue with the guests as far as finding people because I
Right.
knew a lot, and it didn't hurt that I was also an author and speaker and trainer
Sure.
because I knew others, but there's been some interesting things where there's people I thought would be all gung ho, and
Right.
it just didn't pan out. And then there's other people that I was like, they'd be good. I'll ask them down the road a year or two when my show
Sure.
really takes off. Come to find out, they've been watching and they're like, oh, I'd love to be on your show. What do I have to do? I'm like, you're a year and a half ahead of my schedule. What do I do?
Yeah, I mean, so that is, that's one of the things, right? Is that like if you found me on paper w- or on LinkedIn, what does that mean? That doesn't mean I'll be a great guest. That doesn't mean I want to be a guest necessarily, right? And so, for lack of a better analogy, we built the world's first podcast guest matching site that runs off of the same kind of algorithm software as like a ZipRecruiter or like an eHarmony kind of thing. We're actively matching people, right? So there are about 4 or 5 just databases that like static directories you can look up, and they're all free. So I encourage everyone to do that, or the free Facebook groups you look for guests. But the example is like something as ubiquitous as like a say you're running a we have a member, she runs a the guests she's looking for are a female, Latina, so women that are Latina in cultural heritage, but who are also entrepreneurs, right? Now those 3 words are not very like those are fairly ubiquitous terms, right? But how are you going to find that on LinkedIn? If you're an entrepreneur, you don't necessarily put entrepreneur in your title on LinkedIn, right? You don't put your gender, you don't put your
I don't
culture.
think you can search. I know you can do zip code area. You can go to a geographic location that you might know is a higher density of a specific demographic.
You
But
can search. You can search. You can search things like job titles, for instance, like because it is LinkedIn is a headhunting site for an executive recruiting firm, right? They're the major founders of that company. Um,
that's borderline. Like nowadays, unless you're in a modeling, from my experience in the modeling industry, you're not just generally searching people up by height, weight, hair color, and stuff like that. That's kind of you get in trouble
yeah,
for
no,
that
no,
now
yeah,
in business
oh
on
yeah, but
LinkedIn.
yeah, but on LinkedIn, I could look up like, for instance, if I'm trying to find entrepreneurs, I might be searching by titles like founder, principal,
Yeah.
CEO. But you and I know, like, just because you're a CEO doesn't mean you're an entrepreneur, right? Just because you're the principal doesn't mean you're the entrepreneur. So like, and then
It's
there's
more of
things
a
like, yeah, like,
behavioral type, wouldn't you say?
right, yeah, yeah, exactly. And so again, most people are not going to put that on the LinkedIn profile, right? And so you even look at like, like if you're looking for like Christian businessmen, well, how do you look up something about faith, right? That's not something that most people are putting in something like a LinkedIn kind of thing as well. And so, we're proud of the fact that on our platform, you can put your values, what you believe in, and it's not necessarily, there's two parts of like a guest profile. There's the things that are public, like the book, your books you've published, your bylines, any podcasts or other media or blogs that you've contributed to, so I can quickly vet you in just like a couple seconds instead of spending 7 to 10 hours, right, on average. But the reality is, on the back end of every profile, I can put things like my faith, or even more sensitive things like gender identity, or things like that people do not want to put like in a public forum, right? Our profiles are not indexed by Google on purpose. And so the back end, you can be found by shows that are based on your values, or like the fact that, listen, I've been arrested in two different countries. That's not something I'm going to put on my LinkedIn profile, but it makes me a great podcast guest. That's a really those are interesting stories, right?
I love
Either
how
one
you're
of
like,
them.
well, that's something I don't want out there in the public. As we're live and this is going to
Yeah.
thousands of
Yeah.
people.
Well, it's fine, but I'm not putting it on my LinkedIn, and I'm not putting
No,
it on my
I
like
get it. I'm
my
just messing
YouTube.
with
Yeah,
you.
I'm not putting it on my YouTube, video tags and stuff like that. But things like, or even something simple as like, you know, I
That's a heck of a headline, though. Maybe you could put it on your LinkedIn profile,
yeah,
or at least
seriously.
cover photo.
you know yeah, but things like, even things like, like I'm a dad, I'm also a coach, right? Um I live in the inner city. I'm very justice oriented. I'm a retired pastor. Like, all these things are not necessarily things that I put on my shingle, my professional shingle, as far as, I'm a professional speaker. I speak on Get Ahead by Giving Back. We're a podcast analyst for the industry. Those are things we put out there, but all these other things that might maybe be an interesting guest, like, say I love fishing. If I'm a CPA and I'm in a commoditized industry, if I get on a fishing podcast and I tell these great fishing stories, anyone listening to that show that wants a CPA, they're going to hire me, right? Because I have this affinity that they have as well. And so, we just thought it was about time.
You could even argue that you'd be doing something better than just talking about your surface level stuff, because most people don't even get into. I love swimming, boating, water sports. I grew up on the water, live on the water, always been on it. Love it. Always asked for the jacuzzi rooms and view of the pool at hotels and stuff.
Right.
Background's blue.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's what people want to connect with. So you're saying not only can I go in there to find great guests, I can find the shows to be on, and I can get in there on really specific things. Because again, it's cool to say I'm a number one international best-selling author, but there's also other authors, speakers, trainers, and it's like, oh my god, once you're in it, it's like a dime a dozen. I want to know who likes what you're talking about: fishing, boating, family,
Yeah, I mean,
Christianity.
it's the things that, listen, like, if you met someone in real life, we all know that, like, we're more than just our job, right? The job is one thing, but that's like the most boring question you can ask someone. The best question is like, what's the best vacation you had, or what's something you learned this year, or what's something that makes you uncomfortable. But those are the kind of things that make for very compelling interviews. And so, for instance, if you're like a coach and you're in the coaching industry, professional coach, if you share some of those kind of stories, like with the eating disorder, or mental illness in your family, or you help someone that had a nervous breakdown and you help that CEO get back right on track, like things that are based on value and authenticity, that's where podcasts rule, right? That's the beauty of podcasts as a medium. And so, we're proud of the fact that we're the global leader in this kind of stuff. That nothing exists that helps you showcase the more important parts of yourself, is what we like to say.
I love that. So you kind of alluded to it, but if I were to directly ask you, who do you help? Is it strictly author speakers? I mean, who's your ideal prospect for someone listening going, I need to get on awesome guests?
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I'll say it's a little bit wider than that, and it's that someone that's just to the point where, like, you know what, I know that I got some great stories to tell. Maybe I'm not killing it in sales and marketing, and maybe I don't want to put in the work of putting together like a good podcast myself, right? But the podcasting gold rush is here, and it's here to stay. So the question is, how are you going to take advantage of this medium without having to do your own show, right? And the reality is, if you're a podcast host, the best way to grow your show is to be on other shows, right? It's basically anyone that wants to shed that best kept secret kind of label. We do have specific tools for, like, there's a reason PR agencies. We have 5 really large PR agencies that use our tool. They load up their clients because their clients are never going to use. We're a do-it-yourself solution, right? So their clients are never going to use our site, and so but these are PR agencies that get paid per like show placement for each of their clients, right? So they load up all their clients, and for instance, if I'm an author right now and I know I want to do my Amazon book launch, you know, um, February 1st, I will do as many interviews.
Day I launched my show.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, but say I want to do as many uh, there's basically like a feature. If I have like a marketing budget, I can do what we call a fast track fee to say, listen, book me on your show because I'm interesting, but after the interview goes well and you think it's great, could you specifically release that episode within a specific window of time to help me with my campaign, right? And so think of your crowdfunding, or again, book launch, or like a speaking tour. um, like if I'm speaking in the Baltimore area, I can look up Baltimore centric podcasts as a guest and just pitch them and say, listen, I'm going to be in your town to do this keynote speech on Thursday. How about, anytime on Wednesday, anytime on Friday, I pop into your show, preferably maybe before the event, right? It's just kind of generate some publicity for that. So it's it's kind of like, it'd be nice if this was on radio, but radio, it's a live medium, and you can only do this kind of stuff if you have a large PR agency, right? But since it's a do-it-yourself tool, we built all the tools in there for you to be able to get the publicity you need to grow your reach and influence without $1 million budget. Like if you said, hey, podcasters, if you will promise to release my episode within this window, I'll pay you $100. Like that's a really good use of $100. You know, it's a really smart use instead of just like a Facebook ad or whatever you're gonna do.
Well, I'm glad you made it because when you were telling me about it, I was geeked because I had just launched my show. I admittedly had no clue what the heck I was doing short of the video side of things. But I was freaking out because audio podcasting, it was new to me. I knew I'd figure it out. I always do when I always hit my goals. But what I loved was, and you're sharing it now about there's people that want to drop their book. And yeah, they want to be on 100 shows, but it's not just throughout the year. It could be in 3 weeks. When you
Right.
coincide that is a huge expert authority insight that you're sharing because one of the things when I'm taking my clients through the book launch process, that is part of the process. We talk about how much publicity can you get leading up to it. So come launch day, they're aware. That's great. You're on 100 shows, 2 months from now. But if your launch day today or tomorrow or this week, you want them ahead of schedule.
Right.
And now, you have the foresight to build that into the software. So I just have to click a button and go boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's because I have been a professional speaker for, I want to say, ever since I was 16 years old. And so like you, we swim in a lot of the same circles. A lot of these expert, people that want to be infopreneurs or expertpreneur kind of things. And I just like, there's got to be an easier way. There's ways back in the day for you still, if you want to get in traditional media, you got to hire a PR company, and they're going to do a lot of this legwork. But this kind of tool doesn't even exist for traditional media. So, probably like in the future, like I know for a fact right now, we have 3 journalists that use our site. They sign up as a host because who they're looking for is guest sources, right, for their different articles and whatnot, to do background research and to quote you and stuff like that. So eventually, earned media or traditional media is probably going to use this site just like anyone else. But we specifically built it for, like you're saying, like the author or the like a crowdfunder, something that has like a specific timeline in mind, because you can just do all these interviews right now. You can pitch 100 shows a day on our platform. There's a way to do it like on autopilot, even if you wanted to. And then make sure it's all going live right around the same time, so it feels like there's a legitimate buzz around your initiative.
That's very exciting, even to me. I know there's a lot of people listening that are like, wow, I need to get this, and I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes on EA Interviews, the website. But I
I
kind
kind
of
of
want
want
to
to launch
launch
a
a
new
new
book
book
now
now
just
just
to
to
put all
put
this
all this
into
into
action.
action. And I
I
understand the value of this, and I wish I would have known about it 7 years ago. Tell me, what is your biggest success story you've had? Okay, we'll try this again. Act like I've done this 100 times plus. What is your biggest success story you've heard from someone using your platform?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll say like so. Unfortunately, we have some pretty big shows using our site to get guests, but um, there's a feature built for those kind of hosts called stealth mode, where they basically can use our site
I
without
saw
you
that.
pitching them, right? And the point is that like we went to a podcasting conference probably about I want to say about 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, and I was able to talk to some NPR producers, and they loved the technology, and they're like, yeah, they have some really esoteric guest needs. But the woman who produces two different shows, she just said, we would never use this technology though, because we already get pitched to death, and so this would just put that on like turbo, and so we didn't know what to call it back then, but we had that feature built out. So I showed it to her, and she's like, oh yeah, we'll totally use this. Basically, if people don't know we're using it. Now I will tell you, the people that are most successful are someone that knows kind of what the medium is a very intimate medium, right? So you and I, we're public speakers, right? But when you're doing podcasting, if you're like speaker guy, that's not gonna work for this medium. You got to kind of be a little more authentic, share some stories that are really more vulnerable and like um, more on the like the maybe somber side of things and whatnot. You still want to lighten it up at the end, but um, so people that have done really well that we've been seeing right now are people that actually do coaching, like professional coaches, because coaching is just about fit, right? Like most coaches know the same thing as other coaches. Like you and I, Mario, even though we're not professional coaches, we could still coach people to be successful in their businesses. Um, but you hire a professional coach based on like the fit of values and like, oh, I think this person's gonna get me. Like, I'm a yoga lifestyle kind of person, and they seem like a yoga lifestyle kind of person, right? Or I'm a hunter, like red meat and potatoes kind of guy, and this guy's like a no nonsense, straight shooter kind of guy. He's my kind of guy, right? So the people that are doing really well are those kind of things. So there's a guy named Aaron Walker, and I wish I could take credit for it, but he grew his coaching business before our platform even existed. And just like you said, you wish this platform had been around. He wishes this thing was around. He did in his first 3 years of coaching. He had zero clients, just retired, pretty young age from a very successful, CEO kind of position and whatnot. And he didn't have any clients, and how do you start coaching? And but the problem, he's like an old ubiquitous white guy. There's like nothing special about him. He's not going to get on Good Morning America. It's just hard for him to get on traditional media. So he started looking at podcasting. In his first 3 years, he did over 308 interviews. And by the end of those 3 years, and again, I want you to listeners to be clear, it wasn't an overnight kind of thing, right? But after 3 years, he was doing $50,000 a month in coaching. Okay, so $50,000 a month. I know most entrepreneurs after 3 years in business would love to be doing $50,000 a month in anything, right? Now, to his credit, the guy just worked really hard. I mean, to do 300 interviews over basically 100 interviews a year and be super compelling and say the same story like it's the first time you did it, and be super authentic. That's really hard to do. Now, since I met him after that 3 year period, so he's going into year 4. He has since done about 300 interviews per year, and now obviously with our technology can do it even faster. And so that's amazing to me.
So he's using it almost exclusively just to book more and more shows.
Yep, just to book more and more shows. And back then, so what he perfected after 3 years, I sat down and interviewed him about like, because obviously he's doing something in his interviews that's landing him coaching clients. That's not a given, right? Just because you're a coach and you're on podcast doesn't mean you're going to land clients. But he had figured something out. And so I was curious. I interviewed him to see if he knew why his interviews are doing well. And he basically, after 3 years, figured out what he needs to say, what he needs to not say, and that kind of stuff. So he perfected his side of the interview, and then now using our platform, it's just like turbo fuel, right? Because now he knows what to do, and now it takes all the work out of pitching shows. Because it's like, his assistant just logs in into the account and just pitches like 50 shows a day. That's it.
That is
Pretty simple.
not only a very successful and inspiring success story, but I'm glad you mentioned him specifically because I know I'm having him on the show.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the thing is he is, there's a lot of, like a lot of people that are successful, it's an iceberg, right? Like what you see on the what you think is their secret to success is only like the very, very tip of that iceberg. And so there's a lot of things he's going on, but one thing he will say is like, hey, he grew his coaching business 0 to 50,000 a month on the power of podcasting. Now back then he hired a PR agency because tools like this didn't exist, from do that kind of stuff. So
And
um,
the
yeah,
whole tip of the iceberg thing is I hear a common theme between all of my VIP guests, and it's the people who are successful willing to put in the work basically. Everyone knows what to do, but
yeah,
I mean, you're just rattling off. Oh yeah, I did. Whether he's doing 300 a year or 303 years, that's a lot.
yeah. It's
And
it's
like
real
you
work.
said, most people stop at what 36, 37. I know
Yeah,
that I heard this stat. Most people don't even get their podcast first the first 10 whatever.
yeah. Pod
Past
fading. Yeah, they
the
pod fade.
first 10
Yeah,
episodes.
yeah, yeah. That's a real thing, right? And I mean, the thing is, like, listen, that's actually one of the, I think, the biggest misnomers about entrepreneurial success is that everyone's touting this like, I gotta work smarter, not harder, kind of thing. But smarter, not harder only applies to you if you work for somebody else. If you work for somebody else, you get paid for 8 hours and just do an hour worth of work, right, and get it done. But for entrepreneurs, you can look at any successful entrepreneur. They work smarter and harder. They are putting in like 60 hours a week, but working really smarter for each hour, right? So basically, in like, Mario, if you are working smarter and harder, and I'm just working smarter, not harder, right? So I basically put in 2 hours of work and I got 8 hours of work done. Yay. And you put in 8 hours of work, but you're working smarter and harder. You've basically lapped me by a week in one day, right? And then basically in 6 months, you've lapped me by almost 2 years if you're working smarter and harder. And so, yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know, you know, anyone that's like a self-made millionaire, we will all tell you it took us 11 years to become an overnight success. It took us anywhere from 9 to 11 years to become an overnight success, and that is a fact. Anyone else that does it other than that, like, that is really, that's like lottery odds kind of stuff. That's just, it's not a way you can plan your success.
Well, it sounds like you're helping a lot of people, and you definitely have a lot of good insights in there. Where do you see this going over the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, I know podcasts will be around, but you and I know there's a lot of big money entering podcasting right now as far as like traditional broadcast media. And then when you think of the growing, like the home speaker, like the Alexa device kind of thing, right? Those things, um, they've been growing by exponentially in their sales the last 2 years. And that's not without self-driving cars yet. Well, self-driving cars, I think that stuff's going to explode even more, right? Because you're going to be able to import your Alexa settings from your home to your mobile office. That's like a self-driving car or whatever. And so we will still be doing this service, but there's probably there's other things going to open up in the industry. But there's no way for us to know. I know that podcasting will still be around, but I'm not sure the media will be the same. I don't think people will consume it or create it in the same way that we're doing right now. I think we have, like, awesome guests. I think when we built our company, we said we have a 10-year runway to make money the way we're currently making money. 10 years from now, the current way we make money is going to be extinct. And that's just being a conservative, right? So I'm not saying the podcasting is going to go away, but I think the way the medium is getting created and consumed will change significant enough that I think our business model will not survive past the 10-year window. So we're about 2 years in to our 10-year forecast. So it's still a good healthy run. That's a
If you were to
multi-million
guess,
company.
what do you think is going to change? You said the way that people are doing it. They're still going to the devices they listen to on may change. But what do you think it will change about how you mentioned the process to create
Yeah,
the podcast
it's going to
itself
be
for what we're doing?
it's going to be more lines of like Netflix experimented with their choose your own adventure movie. you know, I think it was like Black Mirror Bandersnatch or something like that. So um, we like my in probably not the too far future, my narration of choice, say like James Earl Jones or something like that, right, is going to be able to read me my Alexa skills, but in his voice, right? So already like ways 2 years ago, they had Terry Crews tell navigate your directions and stuff like that for you, right? So in 3 years, I think all my content is going to be customizable according to my settings, not you as a creator. So um, right now, audio SEO is garbage. Like it doesn't really work very well. Google's trying to hack that right now, right? Adobe has created software where I can type something and I can make you say something you never said based on a document that I typed based on your voice. They just need to hear 40 sounds that you make, and they can make you say anything, right? So the
Please tell
scary
me
thing
what
is,
that software is.
yeah, it currently exists. Go look up like Key and Peele Adobe, and they basically make them say stuff they never said in this like live demo. And I think it's like 2 years old now. And so the crazy thing with them is that those 40 sounds they need to hear from you. This is like same thing like Dragon naturally speaking software, whatnot. Every president has enough footage out there that they can make a president say anything they want to at this point, right? So it's kind of a scary thing. But on the positive side is that my media will like I'll say like Mario, maybe I love your podcast, I love the content, but I want it to be I want a different voice, right? I want Allison Janney from The West Wing. I want her voice telling me this stuff, and maybe it's a boring interview from Slate Magazine. The interviewer, I can choose like James Earl Jones asks the question, and then Margaret Thatcher does the answers in a British thing. Like I believe that all of our media will be highly customizable that way. So it's going to be I don't know what the role of the creator is going to be and what copyrights are at that point. But like right now, as long as I attribute you as a source, I can like parody your stuff. I can play almost your whole interview as long as I'm doing it as a commentary, right? And so
Wow, that's interesting. So if you don't like my voice, you could replace it with Elizabeth Hurley, for example.
yeah, and I can say, you know what? Also, like there's like a sportscaster I like. His name's Adrian Wojnarowski. He breaks all this NBA news, right? But on his podcast, his like the way he talks is really annoying. It's very herky jerky. He's clearly a journalist that deals in the written word, not the spoken word, right? When I would say like I love his content, but I want it to be read by someone else that's more fluid. I want it to be read by you, right? I don't want it to be read by him, and that kind of stuff. And so I just think um, everything is going to move to customizable, right? Because that is the future. That is um, right now. There's very little technology wise that we can't get our own. Like if you have enough money, you can get designer drugs for your DNA, like your blood pressure medicine and like mental illness kind of stuff. Um, in about 2 years, if they map our guts properly, like your gut, the what they call microbiomes, like the bacteria in your gut is different than my gut, and so we will be able to generate diets based on our specific gut content, things like that. And so obviously it starts with the super wealthy, get that kind of Cadillac kind of designer drugs, but eventually that all trickles down. And so something with content creation, I think the highly customizable thing is probably what's going to happen.
That's very interesting. I remember when I was studying video production and animation and all that stuff. They were already, and this is let's just say a few years ago, they were already talking about the 3D models of being able to take any actor or actress
Right.
while they're in their prime, map them, and then they could. They've already done it with some movies.
Yeah, I'm kind of, and that's actually it's really interesting. There's a definite dividing line in Hollywood of that, and that they don't want to get in the business of using artificial intelligent versions of like Carrie Fisher in Star Wars, But then I just read the Fast and the Furious. They're bringing the guy who's dead, Paul Walker. They're bringing him back for this movie, right? And they're like using it as a selling point. And whereas like The Irishman is coming out, in on Netflix later this month, and they use a lot of de-aging technology. It's the same de-aging stuff they use in Samuel Jackson for Captain Marvel, right? But Robert De Niro said like, well, using de-aging technology, we don't need makeup artists anymore, right? So you're like, okay, but then de-aging technology that's not that different than an AI version of you, right? It's just what's
And it's
happening is
also the digital version of whenever people do cosmetic
yeah,
surgery.
right. Well, so let me tell you something that a lot of people don't know. Back, I want to say almost 15 years ago, there's a defense contractor, like Northrop Grumman, those kind of things, right? They,
Yeah.
they had a software that can mimic the AI of a person, and the reason they did that is that there was an ex Navy SEAL guy who was the world's foremost consultant in anti-terrorist proofing your building. Right? There was just something about the way he saw things that he was like, this is exactly how you attack it, which is different than the way a SWAT person would look at a building and stuff like that. But the problem is, he was only one guy, and they wanted to reproduce him. So they built this technology that basically downloaded his persona and mostly like his social defects, the way he sees the world in a very unique way, made it so now his AI can be consulting buildings and architecture plans from the very beginning. So what the only reason this software is not ubiquitous right now is that so the government is already using it to terrorist proof buildings and whatnot because they were afraid this one guy's going to die, right? And so how can they so
Everyone will eventually.
right, well, and the reason this software hasn't become ubiquitous yet is that there is a very real intellectual property quandary because the people that want to use the software the most are engineering companies. Because what happens, Mario, is if I retire from an engineering company after a long career of 30 years, I've seen a lot of really weird problems and fixed them, right? So then the gap between me and a newbie from college is a 30-year experience gap, right? It's like a problem solving gap. And so what these companies want to do is before I retire, they want to download my AI onto their servers. So now the company owns that. But then these engineers are like, wait a minute, but that's me though. You don't own me. And they're like, well, we kind of do. You solved all these problems on company time. You went to conferences and learned on company time. So that knowledge should belong to us. So it is a very real active court case going on. And I don't think there's a real answer for it. And so like a lot of good a lot of good stuff like that, like litigation, they're very mindful because litigation is all about precedent. What has been said, and so once that changes, and so even in Hollywood right now, the Hollywood studios, I don't think there's one studio that wants to be known for the studio that basically ushered in the era of using all AI actors. So what you're seeing is they're doing it in very small pieces because there's like a union issue obviously between them and the actors and stuff like, but also they're not sure what kind of future that is. So there's not a studio alive on the planet right now that wants to be known as the one that ushered in this weird era of whatever. But it's the technology is already there, man.
Yeah, I've seen it with. I know people that are scientists, and it's the same thing. Well, you created, you found the cure for cancer through our company, and we funded it. Well,
Yeah,
I'm the one who found it. Well,
yeah. But you usually sign something like that. But this is even more. This is even more like esoteric past that level, right? Because it's not an invention. It's me. It's the way I think. Like I played some role in that. They're like, well, maybe not. They're like, no, I totally, this is, you can't download my like idiosyncrasies and say those are yours or my values. Like those are mine. And so there's a legit battle to
you
be had over
do
that.
while it's working for them. The
Exactly.
second you try to get out of it, it was theirs all along.
Yeah. So it's creepy stuff, but like I said, like the future is all about custom tailored stuff. That is
Does
actually
that
the
include suits?
Yeah, I mean that's the promise of 3D printing. That's how it should be, right? Is that I put on my VR goggles. I can go to a mall, and a tailor can measure me specifically, and then they have a certain source code that is only belongs to that retailer, and they can print me my suit on site, right? I mean that's not that far.
This is exciting and fascinating. Here, I thought I had a fancy show, and I feel just like, well, this is a good start. But I think it's awesome. The expert authority insight I'm hearing is you had a 10-year forecast. You plan this out, and you already have the exit strategy for it. And most people don't think a year or two down the road when they should be, because all this stuff, the reality is changing. I was going to crack a joke, but I didn't want to interrupt you in the beginning. So I said, 8 years ago with podcasting, I was going to say, was podcasting been around that long? The truth is, yeah, it has. It's been 15 years.
Right.
Actually, it's been over a decade for sure, and it's still in its infancy, like you're saying.
Oh yeah, it's still just getting started. Still just getting started.
And it sounds
But
like we're already 20 years ahead of where it's at.
yeah, but again, like to say that this is the way the medium will be created and consumed, there's no way that that's going to be true. 3 years, like you said, in your window, like 3 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, no way. There's no way.
I don't know whether to take offense. If someone really likes the content I'm putting out, doesn't like me, it's like you can replace the host. Well, then
Yeah, but then other people might want you to. They prefer, like, you know what? I don't like this guy. I want Mario to read this, and then you're back in. You're getting paid to do the voiceover for someone else's podcast at that point.
That's so surreal. I'm thinking of some other shows. It's like, no, we need you to do the voiceover for my show.
Right. Well, so the danger is that things become like consolidated, right? So then basically when I listen to podcasts, there's only 20 voice options. But then if I pay an upgrade, I can download some other voices, right? And I can even pay for the original voice. It's just, I don't know. Who knows where it's going to go? But if you're going to make me guess 5 years out, that's what I'm guessing.
That's interesting. So I can technically be on 50 other shows.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, think about it. There's voice actors right now, right? And so they could say, listen, I'll hire out my, you want to use me for like your travel guides or your home like Siri system. Great. This is how much it costs per month. And so now these voice actors get like subscribers, right, to their voice, which is crazy.
Now
but why not?
Is fascinating to me because I have done voice work for various things outside of the show in the last, let's say, few years. So
right.
If anyone does want to use it, let's talk. I'll be happy to listen to you for whatever. I don't know. Let's have a
exactly.
conversation.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
One more question before we go to the imperfect action round, and is who is an entrepreneur you would love to meet that you haven't had the ability to yet, or opportunity, I should say.
This is an interesting one because I just saw her name pop up on the news. Although it's like controversial, I would love to sit down and have like just a candid private dinner with I forget her name, but she's the co-founder of Theranos, right? At the time, she was the youngest billionaire, youngest woman billionaire in the world, right? And then they found out it's all fraudulent and stuff like that, right? So she was in the news yesterday because her lawyers have been complaining that she hasn't been paying them for a year. So she was had an arraignment date. But I just think so everything up to her becoming the youngest female billionaire, like, she was inventing stuff when she was like in junior high and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I think she had a Stanford education. Like, I think that would be such an interesting person to like just figure out like what happened. And what are some ideas she has that she can't do because she's her name has been sullied, but she's probably got other business ideas, right?
She has behavior and personality type that she's creative, ambitious.
Yeah. But where did it go wrong? And why did it go wrong? And like, was it really just one thing? Was it that her and her co-founder were secretly dating without anyone else in the company knowing? Did that led to then other secret things, right? Or was she the instigator? Was he the instigator, right? Because there's a typical story of like one person was corrupt and then the lover like basically corroborated their efforts. Like, who knows, right? And so I just think it's fascinating, but I don't know if I don't think she's doing interviews right now, So
we should reach out to her. I find it interesting. This is the first time this has ever happened where both of us don't know the name.
Yeah, I just know her as the founder of Theranos, right?
You know what? I'm going to do something else I've never done. Hey, Alexa, who's the founder of Theranos? Great. Alexa don't even know.
No.
Can you hear her?
Yeah, I could. That's cool.
What the heck?
Yeah, but
I'll tell you what, we're gonna thank our sponsor, and we'll figure it out by the time we get back.
Awesome.
And we are back with the imperfect action round. And today's special password, keyword, special reference, whatever you want to call it. I'm making all this up. Her name is Elizabeth Holmes.
Yeah, that's her. That's her. At 19 years
Thank
old,
you,
man.
Google.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
now I'm more inclined to hook up the Google Home that's sitting in the box because you're useless. All right, first question. What? This is awesome. What? What what is the fastest path to the cash
Like for me or in life?
for your prospects?
For our prospects, if you have a very very defined niche, that I think that's the hardest thing for entrepreneurs to do, is to like really niche down, right? Because you feel like you're leaving money on the table. But here in San Diego, we have a world famous example of a niche, which is Comic Con. There's 140,000 attendees. It sells out in 2 minutes every year. But they've never moved off of their niche. And so I think the hardest thing for entrepreneurs is, if Mario, if I were to ask any of your listeners, say, hey, who's your ideal client? They would say kind of like something. I'm like, no, who woke up this morning praying to God that they would meet you? Like there is a person that meets that criteria, they are very very likely to buy. But I think unfortunately most people don't know who that is.
Very well said. Number two. What is the biggest problem you see your prospects making, and the fastest way they can fix it?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem, I'll say with people like Awesome Guests, is that they're trained by things like LinkedIn and Facebook of try to put like all like the best like envious parts of yourself out there, right? But to really be good at podcasting, you've got to share your stories about your warts, so that people can identify with that, like the zero to hero like narrative arc, right? So if you're always coming across as the hero, it's never going to work for you in podcasting. In podcasting, you've got to show up with a story that tells people where you were at zero, and then how you kind of grew out of that. And so, again, that's why on our platform people are allowed to put in, or should put in, as many things as possible. But one of the things we see is most guest experts are only putting the good things about themselves and not the things that make them really more interesting.
So like you were saying earlier, I wanted to ask you again. You were doing so well. I didn't want to ruin the flow. But
Yeah.
podcast, when you made the comment about Mr. Public Speaker, it sounds like you're saying the podcasting is more conversational. Where public speaking, you kind of got to do the acting showpiece kind of deal.
Yeah, it definitely is more of like a, when you're speaker guy, you are trying to exude in your presentation and even your articulation this expertise, right? But in the podcasting medium, your expertise gets revealed by your vulnerability, by your authenticity, and so less performance, more like genuine, vulnerability and things like that. Yeah.
All right. Number three. What is the best way to maximize customer lifetime value?
Yeah, I think if you know who your ideal customer is, then you basically only listen to them, right? You don't listen to the naysayers, the haters. You don't listen to your maybe customer. Like, you listen to your ideal customer. And lots of people, once we get the sale, we stop asking them because we're just like, well, we got money, relationship's over. But then you ask, hey Mario, so now that you bought this thing, how's it going? What, and but you do it more than just once, right? The typical way you do is like a net promoter score, right? On a scale 1 to 10, how likely to recommend us to a friend or colleague? Why or why not? That's the part that a lot of people leave out. Why or why not? Right? So if I say, well, if you'd recommend Awesome Guests, you're like, well, yeah, well, I'd give it a 7. Okay, well, that's not a 10. So why or why not? And you would say whatever. We're like, oh, those are future Those are future products and services. And so we even know, like in our company, we have a map of features that we're rolling out, but and it's all data driven, right? It's all by people saying like, oh, I'm trying to do this, the site's not quite doing that, so we know what we're going to roll out. We're not just guessing. So that's the key to lifetime customer value is you lock in your loyalty by just having a good authentic feedback relationship.
And I think it's so important that you're sharing that, getting the feedback from your customers. And I'm thinking of the story you shared just a bit ago when you're going when you're talking to the lady from PR at the event, and she's going, well, we'd never use that because we already get so many requests, and this would just amplify that.
Right.
Well, check out this new feature where you can browse in stealth mode. Oh, we're going
Yeah.
to sign up for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
That's
and
a great
also
success story for you because it's like when you know what your customers want and you give it to them.
yeah.
It's not rocket science. I have a
No,
business.
but I
I
think
can
yeah.
use you this way.
Yeah. But I think that's the hard part is to even like so back when we ran our strategy company, like we only needed like 14 clients a year, right? So we're not talking like high volume. But when someone didn't choose us, when someone didn't accept our proposal for services, we asked them the same question on a scale 1 to 10, how likely to recommend us, right? And so it's interesting. I'll tell you the story. Someone gave us a 10. They would on a 10 recommend us, but they didn't hire us. I'm like, that's a huge disconnect. Why is that? And they said, well, because in order to hire you, like we have to put down 20% up front, and we just don't have that kind of money. And if you had a payment plan, we would hire you right away. I never thought like for a $90,000 service we should do a payment plan because I always thought you either have the money or you don't, right? But I asked that question for a sale that we didn't get, and then we ended up getting that sale because he's like, well, yeah, if we just did payment plans, I'm like, well, what do you mean payment plan? Like, we can't start working with you until we have 20% banked in. And they was like, well, it's fine. Let me start paying towards that though every month. And like we never would have figured that out on our own ever.
So you didn't get started on the service, but you let them start paying for it till they hit that threshold. Then you started the services.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's very valuable feedback.
Yeah, I mean, because as like a consultant, like we never gave people access to our calendar to even start scheduling time until they put down 20%. Because why am I going to give you time in my calendar that someone else could be paying for if you're not paying for it? Doesn't make any sense. So yeah,
We got a whole other interview right here. You're throwing it all down. That's
yeah, but that's another life, man. That's my old life. I don't do that.
valuable tips though. Expert authority tips.
Yep.
Love the insight. What is a book you would recommend to expert authority world?
Um, my favorite book for entrepreneurs is Great by Choice. It's from the same author, Jim Collins. It's Good to Great. But Good to Create was really written for like large companies, like Fortune-sized companies, right? And it's a book on leadership. Where Great by Choice is a great book for entrepreneurs, and Jim Collins is smart. He wrote it when the economy was tanking and more people were getting laid off and starting their own companies. And so it really is. It's an academic read, just like a Good to Great is. But man, I give out 3 books like candy. Anytime I do a workshop for entrepreneurs, I give out 3 books. I give out Great by Choice. I give out the E Myth, Revisited by Michael Gerber, and I give out Everybody Writes by Ann Handley, which is like the best marketing book, bar none, on the planet. Very practical. It's not about marketing strategy. It's like how to actually do marketing. But those 3 books are my go-tos for anyone that wants to become better at what they do.
Well, I appreciate that. You're making this super easy. I had a feeling you had more than one, and I was going to say if you want to give a couple, like three, perfect.
Yeah, that's it. those are my go-to.
You are awesome. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I can't wait to see you again at the next event. Where can people learn more about you and sign up for awesome guests?
Yeah, I mean, to learn about me, just look up, just you can look up my TED Talk. Just look up TED Get Ahead by Giving Back. You can find me on LinkedIn, Joon. I think you can put that in your show notes too. I'm pretty sure the only June out there. And then yeah, awesome guests. They can always take a look, but I would recommend them to go through the link that you put in your show notes because we'll send them to a specific page just for your listeners. So
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, June. It's been a pleasure. Definitely had a lot of fun. And you shared some really great expert authority insights. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me, serve your audience, and hope to hear some great feedback in the future from the different comments and all that stuff.
All right, Expert Authority World, we have another great episode here. I hope you had as much fun as I did. We'll see you on tomorrow. Have a great day, and God bless.